She was once an ordinary girl with ordinary dreams. She wanted to study, to work, to travel, to live a life like everyone else, but slowly her life began to change. Her weight started increasing. At first, it was small, something she thought she could control. But year after year, the numbers grew higher. Until one day, she realized she was trapped inside a body she no longer recognized. Walking became harder. Climbing stairs felt impossible. Even small movements made her breath heavy. People around her began to stare. Some whispered, some laughed, some even pointed fingers. The world saw only her size, not her soul. And that hurt more than the physical pain she carried every day. Her family tried to help, cooking meals, encouraging her to move, but nothing seemed to work. Food had become both her comfort and her curse. Whenever she felt sad, she ate. Whenever she felt hopeless, she ate. The more she ate, the more the weight grew. And the more she felt like she was drowning in her own body. Soon, simple tasks became impossible. She could not fit into cars, could not sit comfortably on chairs, could not sleep without gasping for breath. Doctors warned her of the risks: heart problems, diabetes, even death. But by then, she was already the heaviest female in the world. A title that felt more like a sentence than a record. Her days were spent inside, lying in bed or sitting in one spot. Curtains closed, television flickering. The outside world kept moving, but for her, time felt frozen. She heard children laughing in the streets, saw neighbors walking by, but she could not join them. She was a prisoner of her own weight. What hurt her most was the loneliness. Friends who once visited stopped coming. Strangers only saw her as a story, not a person. Some neighbors whispered cruel things. She did this to herself. She never changed. Their words cut deep. She wanted to shout, to tell them how hard she tried. But no one wanted to listen. Even her reflection in the mirror felt like a stranger. She avoided looking at herself. She hated the way people reacted to her size. But she hated even more the way she had come to hate herself. Nights were the hardest, when everyone else was asleep and silence filled the room. She would cry quietly, wondering how her life had come to this. Wondering if she would ever escape. The title heaviest female in the world brought reporters. They came with cameras and questions. Some wanted to help, but many just wanted a story. They showed her to the world like a spectacle. Millions of people saw her. Some sent messages of encouragement. But many sent cruel comments. She tried not to read them. But deep down, the words hurt. Her health continued to get worse. Even sitting up became painful. She needed help to bathe, to eat, to move. Her dignity was slowly slipping away. She felt ashamed that she needed others for even the simplest tasks. She asked herself again and again, how did I get here? How did I let this happen? But the truth was not simple. Her weight was not just about food. It was about years of pain, loneliness, and hopelessness. It was about a heart that sought comfort in the only way it knew. She was not lazy. She was not weak. She was fighting battles no one could see. Every day felt like the breaking point. Doctors warned her she might not survive another year. Every morning she woke up, she wondered if it would be her last. She prayed for strength, prayed for a miracle, prayed for another chance, but at the same time, she feared it was already too late. The world called her the heaviest female in the world, but she was more than that. She was a human being with dreams, with fears, with a heart that longed for love and acceptance, yet all anyone seemed to see was her size. The weight was crushing not only her body but also her spirit. And so she lived each day in silence, waiting, hoping, wondering. At the breaking point of her life, when everything seemed hopeless, she did not know that change was on the horizon. She did not know that her story was about to inspire millions. She only knew the pain of the present, the weight of her body. and the loneliness of a world that had turned her into a headline instead of a person. Asterisk, it began quietly, with neighbors whispering. People in her town knew of her size, but they never imagined the world would one day know her name. At first, it was small news. A few reporters curious about the woman who could barely leave her home. But soon, the story spread. Headlines appeared, and before long, she was no longer just a woman struggling in silence. She became the heaviest female in the world. Television crews arrived at her door. They brought cameras, lights, and microphones, asking questions that felt sharp and heavy. Some asked gently, hoping to understand, but others were only there for the spectacle. They wanted images. They wanted ratings. She sat there, trapped in her own home, feeling more like a display than a person. Her face appeared on news channels, documentaries, and even tabloids. People she had never met knew her story. Some pitied her. Some mocked her. Others debated her life as though she were not real. She read comments that cut into her soul. She's lazy. She did this to herself. She's hopeless. The cruelty of strangers weighed heavier than the body she already carried. And yet, among the cruelty, there were voices of kindness. Some people prayed for her. Others wrote letters of support, telling her she was not alone. A few reached out to offer help, strangers who had never seen her but wanted to remind her that compassion still existed. Those messages gave her small sparks of hope in the darkness. Doctors, too, began to take notice. Her story reached medical communities, and specialists debated if her life could be saved. Some said she had only months left. Others believed with the right treatment she might survive. Teams of doctors came forward offering to help. They explained the dangers. Her heart was under immense pressure. Her lungs were weak, her blood sugar unstable. Every day she remained at that weight was a risk of never waking up. For her family, the attention was overwhelming. They loved her, but they did not know how to help. Now, the world was watching, and they felt the pressure. Reporters camped outside. Neighbors stopped them in the street, asking questions as if their pain was entertainment. It was as if her life had stopped being private, as if her struggles belonged to everyone else. She sat in her bed, staring at the television one evening. Watching her own face on the screen, she barely recognized herself. It was strange to see her life narrated by strangers who did not know her heart. They spoke of her weight, her health, her chances of survival. But they did not speak of her kindness, her dreams, or the girl she once was. She whispered softly, "That's not all of me," but no one could hear. The world's eyes were on her now. Her pain was public, her humiliation shared. Yet this attention also brought something she had never expected: hope. For the first time, doctors offered serious plans. Hospitals contacted her family. Charities reached out with support. People who once ignored her now wanted to help her live. It was confusing, overwhelming, and frightening. But it was also the first real chance she had been given in years. At the same time, the pressure grew heavier. If she accepted help, she would have to change everything: her diet, her habits, her daily life, and she knew it would not be easy. The world might cheer her on, but she was the one who had to fight the battle. She was the one who had to endure the pain of transformation. Some days she wanted to hide, to close the curtains, and pretend no one knew her name. But other days, she looked at the letters of support, the prayers from strangers, the hope in her family's eyes, and she thought, "Maybe I can try." The thought of failure scared her. But the thought of dying without trying scared her more. The world had turned her into a headline. But now that same world was watching to see what she would do next. Would she give up, or would she fight? Would she remain the heaviest female in the world? Or would she write a new story for herself? And as the cameras waited, the doctors planned, and millions of people whispered her name. She quietly made a choice that would soon shock everyone. She decided to fight back. She decided to try. The decision was made. She would not allow herself to remain trapped forever. The world had seen her at her lowest, but now she wanted them to see her fight. Doctors arrived with plans. Her family stood beside her. And for the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope. But the journey ahead would test her more than anything she had ever faced. The first step was the hardest, changing her diet. Foods that once brought comfort were taken away. Sugary drinks, fried meals, endless snacks, all replaced with small bowls of vegetables, lean meats, and water. At first, she resisted. Her body craved the comfort of her old habits. Her mind screamed for the flavors that had numbed her pain for so long. She cried some nights, clutching her blanket, whispering, "I can't do this." But each time, her family reminded her, "You can. And you must." Then came the therapy. Her body was so heavy that even moving an arm for exercise brought pain. The doctors asked her to sit up, to stretch, to take steps. Every movement felt like climbing a mountain. Sweat poured from her skin. Her muscles ached. Her breath grew short. There were moments she thought she would collapse, moments she wanted to quit. But the thought of dying without trying pushed her forward. The cameras followed her. Some people cheered, others doubted. But she tried not to think of them. She focused on the simple victories. One more step, one more stretch, one more day without giving up. Every pound lost was a battle won. Every small change felt like a miracle. Surgery was the next stage. Doctors explained the risks. She could not stop trembling as she signed the papers. Her life was already fragile, and the surgery could either save her or end her. Before being taken into the operating room, she whispered a prayer, "Let me live. Let me change." Hours later, when she opened her eyes and saw her family's tears of relief, she realized she had been given another chance. Recovery was slow. Pain clung to her body. She could not eat much, could not move easily. But each day she pushed herself a little more. The doctors praised her courage, her family cheered her victories, and strangers around the world sent her messages of encouragement. She held on to their words on the darkest days. Her transformation was not just physical, it was emotional for the first time. She began to believe she was worth saving. She began to see herself as more than a headline. She was not just the heaviest female in the world, she was a fighter. A survivor, a woman with dreams still waiting to be lived. But the road was not smooth. There were setbacks. Some weeks she lost no weight. Some days the pain returned so strongly she could not get out of bed. On those days, she felt hopeless again. She feared slipping back into old habits. She feared the world laughing at her once more. But when doubt filled her heart, she remembered the boy she once saw outside her window. Running freely, she whispered to herself, "One day, I will walk like that." Slowly, the changes became visible. Her face grew thinner, her arms lighter. She began to sit up longer, to stand without support. She even took short steps across the room. Her family clapped and cried at each milestone. The woman who once could not leave her bed was now moving, breathing, and living in ways no one thought possible. Doctors marveled at her progress. They called her story rare, inspiring, unbelievable. But she knew the truth. That was not a miracle. It was pain. It was struggle. It was tears shed in silence. And it was a will that refused to break. She carried scars on her body and on her heart. But each scar was proof that she was still alive. Still fighting, months turned into years. Her weight continued to drop. Her strength returned little by little. She laughed again, something she thought she had lost forever. She began to speak to others, reminding them that change is possible, telling them that no matter how heavy life feels, there is always hope. Her journey of transformation was far from easy. It was not quick, not magical, but it was real. It was proof that even the heaviest burdens can be lifted when courage meets determination. She had been at the edge of death, but now she was walking back into life. And though she had not yet reached the end of her journey, she was no longer the same woman the world had once known. She was no longer trapped. No longer voiceless, she was rising, step by painful step, toward the day when she would finally reveal to the world the new life she had fought so hard to claim. Years passed since the world had first known her as the heaviest female alive. People had once whispered that she would not survive, that her body was too weak, too broken, too heavy to endure. But she had proved them all wrong. Step by step, pound by pound, she fought, and now, the time had come for the world to see what she had become. The day of her first public appearance after her transformation arrived quietly. She stood in front of a mirror, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. Her face was slimmer, her eyes brighter, her body no longer trapped under endless weight. She touched her reflection gently, whispering, "I'm still me, but I'm free now." When she walked outside, the sun felt different on her skin. The breeze touched her face with a softness she had long forgotten. She moved slowly, but with strength. Each step felt like victory, each breath like freedom. Neighbors who had once pitied or mocked her now gasped in shock. Some cried, others applauded. They could not believe the change before their eyes. The media returned, cameras flashing. Microphones pushed toward her, but this time, she was not a headline of sadness or pity. She was a story of hope. She spoke softly, but firmly. "I was once trapped in my own body, but I refuse to give up. If I can fight, anyone can." Her words traveled far, inspiring thousands who had once felt hopeless. Doctors who had once doubted her survival now called her a miracle. They praised her determination, her discipline, her refusal to surrender. But she corrected them. "I am not a miracle. I am proof that change is possible when you believe in yourself, when you fight every single day." Her family, who had never left her side, wept with joy. They remembered the nights of pain, the tears, the fear that she might not live to see another day, and now they stood beside her, watching her walk freely, watching her laugh again. Their pride shone brighter than words could capture. But the greatest moment came when she stood before a crowd at a community event. People gathered not to mock her, but to listen. She told them her truth. She told them of the loneliness, the humiliation, the cruelty of strangers. She told them of the pain of being seen only for her size. She told them of the fight, the nights she wanted to give up, and the mornings she forced herself to try again. The crowd listened in silence, many with tears streaming down their cheeks. At the end, she smiled and said, "I was once called the heaviest female in the world. Today, I am simply me, alive, walking, and free. And if you carry a burden that feels too heavy, know this you can rise too." The audience erupted in applause. Her story had touched their hearts, not because of the numbers she lost, but because of the strength she gained. From that day on, she became more than a story. She became a voice. She worked with organizations to spread awareness about health, about compassion, about never judging someone by what you see. She encouraged others who struggled with weight, reminding them that they were not alone, reminding them that transformation begins with belief. Her life was no longer defined by the walls of her room or the whispers of neighbors. She traveled, she met people, she inspired them. She laughed again, lived again, and dreamed again. She was no longer the woman who cried silently at night. She was the woman who had turned pain into purpose. When the world looked at her now, they did not see a record or a headline. They saw resilience, courage, and hope. They saw a woman who had faced death and chosen life. They saw a survivor who carried scars proudly because they told the story of battles fought and won. And as she stood in the sunlight, smiling at the life she had built, she realized something important. She had once thought her story was only about weight. But now she knew it was about far more. It was about freedom, dignity, and the truth that no burden is too heavy when hope is stronger than fear.